In World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King Classic, there are plenty of enemies you can find all across the surface of Northrend. But sometimes the real threat you need to worry about is what lurks beneath the ice. The sprawling city of Azul Nerub and the insectoids called the Nerubians is Northrend's dark-kept secret. How did they get here? Who do they serve? And how can you make sure that they never get within a 50-foot radius of you, because by the light, they are horrifying? Well, thankfully, I can answer some of those questions. My name is PlatinumWoW, and let me give you my interpretation of these earth-dwelling, nightmare-fueled creatures. Our story begins 16,000 years ago. The troll and old god insects called the Aekir waged war with one another in violent battles. The trolls pushed the insectoids all across to different corners of Azeroth. Eventually, the trolls would be victorious in their war, but that does not mean all of the Aekir necessarily died. These pockets of isolated creatures would eventually evolve into their own distinct races. For example, the ones in the southwestern side of the continent, by Ahn'Qiraj, would turn into the Qiraji. The ones in the southeast would turn into the Mantid. And finally, the ones in the north stumbled upon a Tol'vir society, and subsequently killed or enslaved all of them. Now, over time, these Aekir would eventually evolve into the Nerubians we know today, and repurpose the Tol'vir architecture with a variety of other inspirations to make it look edgy and cool. Now, between the time frame of 16,000 years ago to somewhere around modern day, the Nerubians stopped worshipping the old gods entirely, and really we can only speculate on why. Perhaps they didn't have good contact with them, seeing as Yogg-Saron and the rest were locked up in maximum security prison. Maybe it was because the old gods didn't try to assist them in some sort of manner during the previous war, so the Nerubians learned to resent them. Or perhaps the Nerubians were just going through an angsty teenager phase, revolting against authority with all their new brooding architecture. Point is, the Nerubians are in a unique position on Azeroth, because they are some of the few who don't worship any sort of gods and are their own independent faction. But this didn't stop them from expanding their empire to an incredible degree. They enslaved the Jormungandr worms to help carve out their city of Azul Nerub that is rumored to span half the length of Northrend. Now, in the city, there are a bunch of different types of Nerubians that exist, all with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. There are Nerubian spiders, flyers, and your normal basic run-of-the-mill Nerubian. One of the more substantial sub-races are the Nerubian seers, who are the most intelligent beings in the entire faction, and you'll typically see them take on the roles of sorcerers or advisors. Advisors to who? Well, Spider Lords are the mighty leaders of the Nerubian society. Anu Barak is the king of kings in Azul Nerub, who rules over his underground lair with an iron fist. Or should I say a claw, or thorax, or... Okay, hold on, let me check here. Okay, so their arms are called raptorials. See, not only are you learning lore, but biology as well. Okay, point is, the Nerubians expanded their empire for thousands of years till a familiar threat you may be aware of dominated the landscape above. Atop the frozen throne, the spirit of the Orca shaman Ner'zhul was encased in ice and was the first instance of a Lich King. From his throne, he used his immense psychic and necromantic powers to build an army of undead called the Scourge. And this sudden, rapidly expanding army did not go unnoticed by the Nerubians. They knew they needed to stop the Scourge as fast as possible before they spiraled out of control. The insectoids used their complex network of caverns to their advantage and would hit the Scourge fast and hard. Their first assault was on the Lich King's fortress of Icecrown Citadel. Much to the Scourge ruler's dismay, the Nerubians were immune to his telepathic powers of domination and the Plague of Undeath. But the Lich King had one more trick up his sleeve.
Bone Storm! The Scourge will watch over this world as a swarm storm of death and destruction. Moonstorm!
Even with their natural resistances, the Nerubians still could be raised into undeath and be forced to join the ranks of the unstoppable Scourge. And although the Nerubians made a valiant attempt to dismantle the undead, their aggressive attacks would only attract the ire of the Lich King. Now an event called the War of the Spider was in full motion. The Scourge army hit the underground kingdom of Azul Nerub with an unending wave of undead. With every dozen of Scourge they would slay, 24 of them would stand in their place. If the Nerubians were going to survive this, they need to use everything at their disposal. Hadronox is a monolithic spider that was released by the Nerubians that slayed countless Scourge in the kingdom of Azul Nerub. Even to this day, when players enter the kingdom, he is still constantly slaying any and all undead who dare challenge him. But such strength was not enough to save the entire kingdom. Some Nerubians attempted to cut their losses and flee from the city and dig deeper into the earth. This would be a fatal mistake, as they accidentally awakened the old god minions, called the Faceless Ones, deep within the earth. Now they were fighting a war on two fronts, and this would be the Nerubians' death knell along with their leader, Nerubian. Now raised into undeath, Nerubian's mind was dominated by the Lich King, and unwillingly slaughtered any and all who resisted against his new master, even the Nerubian servants who once praised him. And long after the War of the Spider, the Traitor King would become one of Arthas's most valuable servants, and help him in his venture to the Frozen Throne. Yes, go forth, my steed. But let's get back to the war. Yeah, no, the Nerubians, they lost big time. All of the slain members of the city were raised into undeath to be loyal members of the Scourge, and various ziggurats in the city were transformed into floating necropolises, which would be a huge benefit to their new masters. And most importantly, the Scourge marketing manager came in and explicitly stated that the Nerubians needed to change their names to ensure that they stay on brand with the Scourge. So for example, the basic Nerubians, they're renamed to Crypt Fiends, and Spider Lords would be renamed to Crypt Lords, for no particular reason other than they sound cool. And the Nerubian society was totally absorbed by the Scourge, and now must unwillingly follow the Lich King's every command from their corrupted husk of their former city. And that's the end of our story. Okay, bye. No, let's not have our story end on a depressing note. When players arrive at Northrend years later during the Wrath of the Lich King, they team up with some of the few remaining Nerubians who have somehow survived the Scourge onslaught. This small group is called the Azul Anak, and gives you quests for the two Nerubian dungeons, Azul Nerub and Anket, the Old Kingdom. So go forth, players, avenge the Nerubians and reclaim the city of Azul Nerub from the Scourge. And while you're at it, get some loot because, let's be honest, I know why you're there. But the fallen city of Azul Nerub is not the only place you can explore in Northrend. Oh no. There are plenty of other places to explore and enemies to defeat who are not nearly as horrifying. Most of the time, in Wrath of the Lich King Classic.